Hold on.
Uh,
Earn again. I need to
Steven is
compose
gonna have a
myself.
hard time editing this.
Yeah, I'm gonna be erring like every 3 seconds. You guys are
Can you
killing me.
can you earn again real quick? I need to compose myself
Yep.
before I go
I'm gonna count to
outside.
5 and then err. So one,
Uh,
2, 3, 4. Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of Random Encounter, the RPG Fan Podcast. We promised this episode back in November, but here it is at last. This is our Music of the Year podcast, where we're going to go over and listen to some of our favorite music from 2012. With me today, I have my associate with RPG Fan.
That'd be me. I'm Derek Embryon on the boards, and I like video game music. Imagine that on this podcast, right?
Wait, we're talking about music? No, I'm just kidding. Also with me, I have RPG Fan alumnus.
Hey, I'm Patrick Gann, Ramza on the RPG Fan Forums, and I'm the one who made Steven do this. And by this, I mean everything cool.
That makes both of us sound really fantastic. Lastly, we have a very special guest.
Hi, I'm Don from Square Enix Music Online. I don't have a username on the RPG Fan forum because I am the forums.
He is the forums.
He's the
He's the
loudest
voice
player.
of the
Posting
people.
on his body for a decade, and he loves it.
And
You got me all tatted up with great comments about game music.
and I am regular guy. I am Steven Talos on the boards, and I write for RPG Fan as well. Basically, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about some of our favorite tracks from 2012. We'll introduce a track, say a couple things about it, and then we'll let you listen to it. We'll also listen to it, and then we'll come back. We'll chat a little bit about it, and then we'll move through that until we've played everybody's really awesome picks. So for me, I decided to go first because I'm drunk on power. So I tried to pick some stuff that I didn't pick for our feature, the Music of the Year feature, so that way we could hear something new and original. So my first track is called Obspawn, and it's actually from The Dark Eye Chains of Satnav, which I also reviewed, and I liked it quite a bit. Patrick reviewed it for his blog, Gamosaurus, I liked it a little bit better than he did, but regardless, the music is fantastic. It's by Daniel Pharos and Dominic Morganroth, who are collectively, as VGMDB tells me, known as the Knights of Soundtrack, which is quite a name. But nomenclature aside, it's the ending track to the game, and I picked it instead of the main track, even though I think the main track is a little more noticeable if you play the game, because it sets the mood for the entire game. It's this melancholy but still beautiful experience, which for me just really encompassed that entire game. So before I say anything further about it, let's go ahead and have a listen to it.
Yo, so that song was pretty good.
Yeah, what'd you guys think of it? Because I mean, obviously I liked it. I picked it.
I detected I don't know if it was an influence, but it definitely sounded really Sakimoto to me. A lot of the sort of the overarching, the epic kind of feel to the track. I liked it a lot, and there was some really nice violin there at the end.
Oh, that part I really loved, and just like I said before too, like the game has this very like melancholy sense of beauty. I mean, the game is gorgeous to look at, especially if it runs properly, which is kind of hit or miss. But it's just, I think that song really encapsulates the game for me.
Yeah, a lot of people in America don't know this, but the Dark Eye is like it's like a pen and paper RPG franchise that sort of rivals Dungeons and Dragons in Germany. Das Schwarzen Auge or something.
Oh yeah,
And so there have been a number of like PC based role playing games and other adventure type games, and this most recent one was a point and click adventure from Daedalic Entertainment, which I love them. I really like the Deponia games. I really hope the ending part of the trilogy is as awesome as the rest of it. But Dark Eye has some really solid, I would call it neo-romantic era music, very much in the vein of some of your better film score composers. So I dig it.
on a technical level, that was a much better explanation than I could have given.
Yeah, I enjoyed the piece for the first time I've heard it. I'll have to hear it again in a little better quality because I have like my headphones on here, but from what I heard, it was very relaxing.
Yeah, that was a very full-bodied song. A lot of the songs on that soundtrack are relegated to smaller chamber music performances. A lot of duets and trios with like harp and flute. A lot of traditional acoustic instrumentation. And I really enjoy that.
Is the game like medieval themed? Because I think that sounds
Yeah,
like
it's a
it would fit.
medieval style fantasy.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that those kind of instrument choices seem to fit very well with that like time period. So that makes
Yeah,
sense.
like it's very like European fantasy style, which would make sense. Also, Pat pointed out while we were listening to it that Abspann actually means, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that, but
Yeah, that was good.
it actually means credits or credited in German. So there you go.
That's your end credits music. So yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I'm glad you guys liked it. Like I said, that whole soundtrack, we'll have a review coming from that whenever I can get around to it. But the whole album is just full of great music that just the oral component of the game is just as, for me, lavish and gorgeous as the graphics, and also I think the gameplay. It's just brilliant adventure game design. And I'm a Sierra vet, so I'm allowed to make claims like that. So, but anyways, move on to the next track. Derek, would you like to introduce us to a cool track?
Yeah, so the first track that I've picked to play today is Near the Water, or Mizu no Hotori, from the Piano Collection's Final Fantasy XII CD, which was arranged by Casey Ormond, a really talented pianist who we actually had the opportunity to interview. I know that's what you were going to say, Stephen. We interviewed him last month, but we're going to be posting that shortly
with this, actually.
Feature. With it? Okay.
Yes.
So it's going to be coming with this podcast.
Yes, at the end of the show, you can listen past the credits, or you can get it separately. We'll have our interview with Casey Ormond,
yes,
who was super nice, and I was talking to him made me thrilled for him because of the experience he had. But you'll have to listen to the interview to hear more about that.
He's a really cool guy, and he's incredibly talented. So, without further ado, this is Casey Ormond's arrangement of Near the Water from Piano Collection's Final Fantasy XII. think that Steven and I at least agree that that's the best track on that album. I just love how interpretive Casey Orman's arrangement of that song is. It's so playful and whimsical, and I like that it's lively and that has all of these incredible transportive qualities that they really take me away when I listen to that song. I like it a lot.
Yeah, when I wrote my review of it, I guess likened it to Hamauzu's Besaid from Final Fantasy X Piano Collections, and Casey said that's exactly what he was going for.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah,
It does sound a lot like that. Yep.
And what's crazy
manipulating the tempo of the original and all that fun stuff.
And what's really crazy about that is, like, in my mind, like, those two composers are very far apart. Sakimoto and Hamauzu are very different people, but there's just those occasional moments where the source material, like, really fits us, like, a different style, and Near the Water fits Impressionism so well. So it was just solid.
Yeah, that song is actually my favorite track from the original soundtrack too. And like in hindsight, like when I was talking to Don about this album before it came out, I was like, oh well, yeah, I don't really remember the Final Fantasy XII soundtrack that well. But then I went back and played the game and listened to it again, and I forgot how, for me, really brilliant the music in that game is, and just like how memorable some of the melodies are. Just because when I think Sakimoto, I think of really, really like appropriate, suitable music for the games it's in. Like, you have these epic sweeping battle marches and that sort of thing. So to have an opportunity to kind of slow down, and you have like the Rabanastre theme, or you have, the Near the Water, just it's probably for me the most memorable soundtrack from Sakimoto, other than maybe Final Fantasy Tactics, but that could be because I played that game way too much.
Yeah.
And I think Casey's arrangement of it was just spot on.
Yeah, and I gotta say, this is Casey's second album of arranging Sakimoto. First he did the Valkyria Chronicles piano album, which I think some of this I'll attribute to the source material, but I don't think it's nearly as good as the FF12 piano. Like, I'm glad it exists, and I'd really like to see this continue. Like, can you guys like stop for a moment and imagine like an FF Tactics piano collection or a Vagrant Story piano collection? Like,
I mentioned FFT piano to Sakimoto, and he said just get on Square Enix about it, because it's all in their hands.
yeah.
Derek and I actually asked Casey for it in the interview too. He said, please cover that. So
I also suggested Apuna, because that music would sound fantastic on piano.
I had never heard that until you said
that's
it,
not-
John.
That's not Sakimoto solo, is it? Right? It's
Sakimoto and Bass Escape, and a lot of Bass Escape arranging Sakimoto, and a lot of Bass Escape arranging Bass Escape. So it's a giant. The only people who aren't on it are Yoshimi Kuda and Asusa Chiba, because they weren't working at the company at the time.
It was a big collab. That's like a 3-disc soundtrack. That's a good one.
Yeah, I had never heard it. Don told me to go listen to it, and I did, and I liked it a lot.
It's pretty good.
So we'll move into our next track. Pat, help us out.
All right. Unlike unlike Steven was all like, I'm not going to pull things from our end of the year feature. Well, I am, because I really like those soundtracks. So we're going to start with a soundtrack for a game that came out in Japan in 2012. It's coming to America in 2013.
Woo!
This is the 14th game in Nippon Ichi's flagship series, the Atelier no female name. And the 14th one is Atelier Aisha. And this song is called, well, there's 4 Invitation Flower tracks, and then there's a season. So this is Invitation Flower Summer. The composer is Kazuki Yanagawa, who I think his first track, I think he started with the PS3 trilogy, the Arlen trilogy with Rorona, and he's gotten a little better with each Gust soundtrack. I'm sorry, I said this was a Nippon Ichi flagship series. This is a Gust flagship series. It's just NIS America that publishes this.
Okay.
That was a huge mistake on my part. That's a gaffe. But yeah, Gust, basically all they do is the Atelier series, and then they also made the Artanelico games. And I didn't really like Yanagawa's work on Artanelico 3, and he started to sort of grow on me, and I really, really like his work on Aisha. So let's take a listen to Invitation Flower Summer.
Yeah, I was saying during the break, or while we were listening to it, that the bass is just. I discovered recently that I have this strange love of bass that I just. Oh, it's awesome, and especially that like little. I don't know. I guess you can't call it a solo. I don't know anything about music, but at the very end, there's that like do thing going on. That oh man.
Yeah, the bassist, there are a couple session musicians that have sort of been with Gust for a while, and I think this guy goes by the name Danny, Dani, and he has been on a lot. I think he started with the first Ars Tonelico back in 2006 and has been on pretty much every Gust soundtrack since then. I really, really like his work and what he brings to the soundtracks. But I think what I like most about that song is the sort of springy, bouncy synth thing going on there. The like, wow, 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 wow. Like it's just jazzy and bouncy, and at the same time, like even with like the electronic stuff going on, there's something very natural and very floral and foresty about it. Like it makes me like want to run through a meadow. So if anyone else feels that way, let's go do that together sometime.
Well, I mean, it is Imitation Flower Summer, so I suppose maybe it takes place in a meadow.
It should.
Like you're running
it's very
through a
funky.
meadow.
I like it.
I think
And
it's. I'm not
very
sure since I haven't
Atelier.
played the game, but I think it's probably the battle theme for summer.
Huh.
I think so. I think it's one of the battle themes.
That would make sense. It's funky. It's very Atelier. See, I know it's pronounced Atelier, but I feel weird. I say
I
Atelier
know.
anyway.
I'm not French. The
Yeah,
R
it's-
is not silent in my brain, which that's very uncultured of me, but whatever.
But
I
the
like
R
it.
is
It's
not.
got that
Go ahead.
sort of wangy. I don't know what you want to call it, like that. Wow, wow, wow. That's in a lot of Atelier games. It has that sort of sound. So it's both iconic of the series and it's fun. I like how peppy it is.
Yeah, I've only really played Atelier Iris, and I beat that one with my brother, and that I got
So
that
good.
same vibe from this song that I got from that game. Like there's just like super peppy, like wow, 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 like everything is joyful, and
Yeah.
normally I would
felt
say whimsical, but you know.
I felt like no soundtrack had topped the old Iris for a very long time, and then I thought Toturi got close, and then I think Aisha might be there. So
Yeah, I'm still warming up to this soundtrack. I do not like that most of the old people are not featured anymore.
yeah, it really
I
really
miss
does.
I
knock
miss
a
the
gut
old Gust composers.
Yeah,
So,
I do too.
I'm actually not too familiar. Like, so when did that change over? Like, was that from like which generation did they?
Starting with the
guys, like-
Arlen trilogy, starting with Rorona, Akira Tsuchiya went from doing a lot of music to just being like an executive director. Like he's moved up in Gust, and then the other two composers, the duo that started on Violet and then really made it big with Iris, that was Daisuke Achiwa and Ken Nakagawa. They've started to do less and less with each soundtrack, and some
Ken
soundtracks.
Nakagawa doesn't even work for Gust anymore. He left.
Right, he left after Merudu, so
And then Aichiwa just does some of the
Vocals.
vocals on this. And then even Yanagawa is freelance now, so I don't know. He left Gus and they brought him back. Who knows?
yeah. This soundtrack has a couple of different people. It has like Yu Shimoda, which is a name I don't really know. Somebody else. But I really like the soundtrack anyway. I was really concerned I wouldn't like it, but I feel like they're really retaining the vibe of and the style of the games very well. So I'm happy about that.
Say, I'm not as close to that series, but I definitely got the vibe. I mean, it felt like Iris to me, so I could agree with that.
Yep.
Don, hit us
Yes.
with another one.
All
Hit us
right,
with
so
something
my
good.
first selection is from our website's Japanese composer of the year, but also even if it wasn't, as it was put to a vote, it was my personal favorite composer of the year, and that's Yuzo Koshiro.
Woo!
It is from a Namco RPG that he composed that was released in October. That only came with like a small preview soundtrack. I cannot deny or confirm that there is a full release in the works,
But we sure hope so.
but I sure hope so too. And so this one, without further ado, is the battle theme when you play as Toki. There's another battle theme that you play as when you're Towa, but I didn't choose that one. So I hope you guys enjoy it. It reminds me of an older game that he composed, and let's see if you guys can figure it out. that was the Toki normal battle theme from Toki Towa Time and Eternity, which I think has a chance to be localized. So I had mentioned that it reminded me of an older Koshiro soundtrack, and to me it just screams Wanged Midnight before it went trancy.
Oh, old Wang in Midnight, the first one.
Yes, the first one.
This is
'Cause
where
it kind of has that espionage kind of actiony vibe, where
Yeah,
it was
it
all
does.
like orchestra.
This is where I have to call you guys senpais because I'm actually not familiar with that beyond what Don has shared with me, and I've liked everything I've heard, and I loved when Koshiro played tracks from Wangan Maximum at MagFest, but beyond that, this track just, that main hook of that, and yeah, I recorded myself making that sound, oops, but it just, that hook just gets me, like, I love Koshiro in general, and just, he's so versatile that I think this is just,
It's sickening how versatile of a composer he is.
and how prolific he is. Like well, I can't say anything about it yet, but I have wanted to ask him for a long time how he keeps things fresh. He produces so much music, and it's all good.
Yeah, I got to meet him very, very briefly at MagFest. I came down real quick to get Koshiro to sign my copy of Misty Blue, which has a really funny picture of him looking awkward in his 20s. And that photo will be on The Verge probably around the same time this podcast goes up. It's a photo of him having to sign that picture and everyone laughing at the like awkward photo of him from '92. It's great.
What was his reaction when you brought that CD? Because
Oh my gosh.
I have a similar reaction for what I brought, and he couldn't believe I actually had the soundtrack.
Well, yeah. So at first he was like,
He's like, wow, you actually own that?
yeah, he was like, wow, you know what that is? And it was like, for me, I mostly had it because it has the arcade version of the ActRaiser soundtrack on it. Like it uses the arcade soundboard instead of Super Famicom. But when he went to open it so he could sign the back booklet, it had that picture of him, and like Koshiro's mom was there, and Shota was there, and Audie was there, and like everyone just burst out laughing, and he hung his head in shame at like how embarrassing the photo was. It was fantastic.
Wakai Toki no Koshiro-san, huh?
Yeah.
But so yeah, Toki Towa has like just the graphics in that game. It's not like Ni no Kuni where it's Studio Ghibli doing a 3D game. It actually looks, it's like an anime that you are controlling. And
that game has to come. We'll just see if Namco does it first party or if they're willing to
let X do it. Woo!
Yeah.
I thought I
Alright.
heard it was pretty much confirmed, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Namco?
I would be shocked if we don't get it.
Yeah, I think the producer had, said that there was a good chance it was going to be localized.
Sweet.
Yeah, and we got Project X Zone coming, so I'm pretty sure anything's fair game now.
Right, seriously.
But so moving to the next track, I'm gonna pick again because it's my turn and I'm awesome. So for my second track, I decided to go with it's from Phoenix Online Studios. Their new game Cognition. I reviewed episode 1, and by the time this comes up, my review for episode 2 might be up too. But it's by Austin Haynes, who also did their fan game of King's Quest, The Silver Lining, and the jump in quality in Haynes' music from The Silver Lining to Cognition is huge. Just I don't know what span of time there was between him composing the original music for King's Quest and to Cognition, but I think it's just so much more mature, and I think it's fantastic. But the track I picked is it's called Not a Witch, which Stay Alive. Sorry. It's called Not a Witch, and the track plays a little bit later in the game. But yeah, Austin Haynes, Not a Witch, Cognition. So yeah, that was Not a Witch, Austin Haynes from the Cognition soundtrack. That song just probably my favorite song on the soundtrack, and the main theme is great too, and all the area themes are excellent, but just that song, the scene it accompanies, it makes that scene so much more because of just this tension in it, and there's that really dirty, like Pat said, crunchy sample sound going on, and just when you get towards the end of the track and that piano comes in, it's just, oh gosh. It gives me chills. Not just because I've heard it in the game, because I first heard it on the soundtrack, but oh man,
It had
Yeah.
I got a little bit of an Akira Yamaoka vibe from that, like
You
very
stole my
gritty.
comment. No. it's
Yeah, you
okay.
stole Don's comment.
no, you guys are both just very, very well versed in sweet music.
Sniped it.
All right. Well, I can elaborate. It kind of was like Akira Yamaoka and Parasite Eve fused together. There.
Oh,
I one-upped it.
you distinguished yourself, Don.
I
Yeah,
one-upped
you-
it. There we go.
Yep.
Because of the piano.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kinda
the
had
piano
that
was-
primal eyes, like.
Yeah.
It was really, yeah, it had a dirty sound. I liked it.
This is PG rated, so I'll skip the comment that I was gonna say
Oh, you
about your comment.
Oh, okay.
The dirtiness.
so dirty, so good.
So Cognition.
Yeah, I know. Like a lot of people sort of panned the game, like they weren't impressed with the game.
So I hope the part 2 matches up to the quality that Austin's music is.
I thought the game was pretty good, and I'm playing episode 2 now, and I don't know when this podcast is going to come out, so I don't want to say anything about my review yet because it might not be out first. But it's the creative talent behind that game is brilliant. Just the artwork and the writing and the music is just, ooh, love it. But so, Derek, hit us.
All right, so my second choice is actually another song by Yuzo Koshiro.
Woo!
And this is from the, not the arranged, but the original Etrian Odyssey 4 soundtrack, or Sekaiju no Meikyu 4. This is one of the, I believe it's one of the boss themes, and I'm not sure if it's one of the final
It's
boss
the
themes.
second normal battle theme.
Oh, is it really?
Yes, it's for the. Well, I don't know how it's gonna be in this game, but like from the first games, like 4th and 5th stratum.
It's
Oh,
way too
yeah,
epic
yeah.
to be a regular battle theme.
Yeah, it's
But-
a regular battle theme.
Well, figures, it's Koshiro. And hopefully I get to actually review this game too. But this is from Etrian Odyssey 4. It is called Battlefield Fate is My Pillar.
Oh yeah.
So I really like that track because it's got that signature combination of guitar and violin. It has kind of a Falcom Sound Team JDK vibe to it for me. I know like all of my critiques are, it sounds like blah.
Oh
But
no, that's how
I'm-
I mean that's how I relate a lot of music too. Is like, oh,
yeah.
this reminds me of this.
I'm not incredibly well versed in musical terminology. I'm learning, but I really like that track a lot. I think it's really high energy and intense. And like I said before, it's if that really is just a standard battle theme, that's too good.
Yeah, I mean that's what amazes me is first of all that for EO4 he went to the full orchestra or the full instrumentation, which at first I was like, oh man, that's a bummer. I really like the retro sound, but I mean, you can't really argue with the results. I mean, that's a regular battle theme for a 3DS game, and high energy is a good way to describe it. I mean, even within this show alone, you've seen two drastically different songs from Koshiro that are just awesome.
I find it really interesting that Derek made the comparison to Falcom because even though Koshiro, he wrote a fair bit of East and East 2, most people don't associate him with Falcom. But then, while this was the OST version that we heard, the super arranged version has like Falcom all over it. The whole thing was handled by Noriyuki Kamikura, who used to be Bass Escape, but is doing a lot with Falcom now. That has Yukihiro Jindo on it, who's been with Falcom for a decade. And then it also had Ryo Yonemitsu, who did the East Perfect collection arrangements, which was cool because that was also Koshiro. And I think alongside the people I mentioned, there were also performers from Falcom's JDK band because Kamikura, knew them and was friends with them that appeared there. So there's like this big Falcom connection there. There's a Falcom connection in another soundtrack that is going to be on my list. But I really do think it's interesting that you made that comparison. And I do think there is sort of a new old school Falcom vibe, like the kind of way I would think about like Oath and Felghana. So yeah. And I love this whole soundtrack. It was definitely in my top 5 OSTs for the year. It's so good.
It was in mine too, and the soundtrack is actually a large part of why I want to play the game so much. That and the fact that Etrian Odyssey 4 has that casual mode, because I will freely admit that Etrian Odyssey games kick my butt.
Yeah, they're too hard. They're so hard.
I would appreciate not having to restart every time I die. So that the music has me really looking forward to that game. It's great stuff.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to that game. Don, would you like to hit us again with another track? And by
No,
Don,
it's my
and by
turn.
Don I mean Pat.
It's my turn. Don can't do his track because it's my turn. All right, the second song that I'd like to talk about today is from the soundtrack for Dust: An Elysian Tale. This soundtrack features a couple songs from Alexander Brandon, and then it also has most of its music by Hyperduck Soundworks, which is Chris Gian and Dan Byrne McCullough, I think. And Chris is I've known of him for years. I finally met him at MagFest this year. He's from Ireland. He's funny as hell. And his music has gotten progressively better with each soundtrack he's done. The first Hyperduck soundtrack I ever heard, I can't even remember what it was, but I wasn't too impressed. And then the Ares soundtrack came out in January of this year, and that was pretty good. And then this came out of nowhere. This Dust soundtrack is like one of it is the most surprising soundtrack because I had no idea it would be this good. And when I heard it, I was just like, oh my gosh, like it is perfect. It is everything that I love about game music. And he's just channeling all the Japanese greats, like everything I love about like the 16-bit and 32-bit era, plus the channeling of world music and a lot of interesting instrumentation. Like it's like Mitsuda meets Shimomura. It's insane how good this music is. The track that I have chosen is track 13 from the soundtrack. It's called The Blackmore Mountains. And I actually, Chris asked me when I saw him at MagFest, he said, well, what's your favorite song from it? I was like, it's a tough call, but I think it's Blackmore. And he was like, that's my favorite too. So let's take a listen.
Yeah, that like you were saying before, I had never heard of Hyperduck at all. I'd heard of Alex Brandon because who doesn't like Paris Cathedral from Deus Ex, but just every track on it was so good. I even told them when I talked to them that that soundtrack made me buy the game, which it was also a great game. So support that. It was made by one guy. So go support that game and buy it. I love it. It's super duper fun and just. I included this on my music of the year, and had Bravely Default not come out, it probably would have been my first or second pick.
It's really one of the best soundtracks of the year, and a lot of people still don't know about it, and I've really sort of been an evangelist for this one. I've really tried my best to get the word out. It's on Bandcamp for what, like $5 or something?
Yeah, it's a stupid price for considering A, how much music you get, and B, how good it is.
Yeah, it's like 90 minutes of music, and it's so good.
And just FYI to people listening too, I'm going to have links to find all of this music, the full albums, so you'll be able to find it and buy it. And you should totally support these artists because every single one of these soundtracks is fantastic. And,
they got consider this your shopping guide. We're
yes,
good like that.
This is your RPG Fan Music Shopping Guide 2012.
Don, what do you think of this fine music from my Irish friend?
I liked it quite a bit. I don't know if I'm just tired or what, but it kind of had a very Sakimoto vibe to me.
Okay, yeah, some of Sakimoto's
some of the parts.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can actually see that, like just the kind of long flow to it, and like.
Yeah,
I know. I can.
When I think of some of Sakimoto's newer work, some of his more rich and more organic composition stuff that like isn't very much like Tactics, but is more like Sakimoto branching out. I feel that.
Yeah, like what is it? Labyrinth no Kanata, Beyond the Labyrinth. That's not Sakimoto. That's Sakuraba. But it is branching out, and it's fantastic.
That's Sakuraba doing something other than what he's been doing his whole life, which is nice. He does that now and then, though. I thought Baten Kaitos he did that, but now we're really getting off track. Let's talk to Don about his next pick for.
All right. So my next pick came from, I guess, our website's best like arrange album or remix album, one of those categories. I don't remember. It's from an album called Falcom Boss Zanmai. You can get it from the Falcom store. They do take overseas orders. It's a little complicated, but it is arranged by Noriyuki Kamakura, which we had mentioned before. And in our website's most recent interview, he said that when the original soundtrack came out, way back when, for Sorcerion, the arrangement for the track I'm about to play called Evil Shaman, he had already imagined doing that in his head.
Isn't this album from the 80s? Or the original soundtrack?
I believe so, yeah. So he was a very musical child.
Sorcerion goes back to like 88, 89, 90.
He's a very musical child.
Wow. Well,
I'm assuming because that's what our interview said since the original release of the album. So without further ado, enjoy. I think you guys will get a kick out of this arrangement.
Ready.
Yeah, so that was Evil Shaman, arranged by Noriyuki Kamikura, who now works freelance, used to work for Base Escape, and is now also part of the Falcom JDK band as a keyboardist. And that was him on the piano, the smooth jazz piano solos.
I was saying while we were listening to it too that for me, I didn't grow up playing Falcom's games. Like I never had any access to them. Like I played Wanderers from Ys on Sega Genesis, which I'm told is awful, but I thought it was cool. But I had no attachment to the music really. So like for me, Falcom is just like tons of guitars wailing. Like I like it in the game, but I can't remember it except for more recent stuff. But I love, like, Don's been sending me a lot of their like jazzy stuff and just all this like really different stuff, and it sounds so good. It doesn't even sound like something you'd expect. I don't want to say expect to hear in a game, but it sounds like something you'd hear. You'd walk into a sweet jazz bar and you'd hear somebody just jamming on it with like a scotch.
I liked it. I really liked the saxophone in that.
I like Scotch.
It was-
Scotch.
Super jazzy.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
it's so
I-
smooth and diverse that, yeah.
And it's very different from the original style.
Oh, yes.
Which
Yeah,
is
really,
neat.
if you
and
look-
you can't always take something and put it in another style and have it work out well, but this is an instance where it worked very well.
Yeah, I just recently sent him another email suggesting another Zanmai album for Falcon to consider, and I hope he passes the word along, and I hope it comes to fruition, and I even suggested tracks and styles for those tracks, so I was into it.
You were doing a lot of the work, huh?
Yeah, I was like, I just want you to do a Zwei Sanmai and then do a jazz version of Dreamworld Serpentina. Please do me a favor. That would be
That'd be cool.
amazing.
Well, I mean, if they're running it the right, it looks like they want one album per Comic Cat. Like that's the idea.
Yeah. So maybe August we'll see if my idea comes to fruition.
That'd be sweet. All right, Steven, lay it on us, man.
All right, well, for my final track, I have selected something from a series that has been way dormant, way too long, and people are pushing for it on their Facebook, and Konami has actually said, we really appreciate your support, no plans at the moment, but if we keep pushing, I mean, there's no way that they'll let a beloved license like Suikoden go to waste. But so my track is from the PSP Suikoden game that was released in 2000. Well, I think the game was actually released in 2011, but the full soundtrack was released on iTunes Japan. There's a truncated version of it that you can get as a disc, but the full soundtrack, which our own Neil Chandran reviewed, this particular track is called Surpass Time, and it's by Miki Higashino. And I think a lot of Suikoden fans are going to recognize this particular song. I mean, I've only played one Suikoden game, and I recognize the song, so without further ado, this is Surpass Time, the menu background music from Genso Suikoden Sumugarashi Gakunen no Toki. that, I mean, if you've ever played Suikoden, I'm sure that song is iconic to you, probably more than it is to me. I've only played 5, and Tactics. But Don actually wanted me to point out too, Seiichi Takamoto did the full soundtrack for this particular Suikoden, but I'm unclear if she did the arrangement or if he did the arrangement of her original tune. But either way, that's a fantastic soundtrack overall, and that song just, when you get to the middle of the track and like that 1980s style like synth comes in, like it's like nostalgia packed into a track for people who are already going to be nostalgic for this song, and just to have that being on the menu is whew.
It's lovely. It's really a shame that we haven't gotten this game, and I hope somehow it gets picked up for a digital release over here, because I would just love to be able to hear that music in context, and I know there are tons of other people that feel that way too. But Suikoden has always had some good music, and that theme is the number one theme that you think of when you hear the name Suikoden. So it was lovely. It was very gentle, soothing, and nostalgic.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think based on the fact that the sound palette very much fits the rest of the OST from the dude whose name I forget, but he goes by Solid Tune. I guess that's like his unit name.
Yeah, Seiichi Takamoto, Solid Tune.
Yeah, the fact that it sounds like the rest of that soundtrack in terms of the instrumentation really makes me think it was just him arranging Higashino's original music. And I really have to say I'm really impressed with him. I've never really heard anything by this guy before, and his full soundtrack, the one that you need a Japanese iTunes account to get,
Yeah, that was a pain.
that thing is so good. Like, there's like 80 songs, and it's like 3.5 hours, and it's just so good through and through. This is a great choice from that, so I appreciate you bringing it to us, Stephen.
For sure. So Don wanted me to say that he thinks this song is amazing too, and yes. So we are all, we have an accord. Neil liked it when he reviewed it. We liked it, but anyways.
Don also wanted me to let everyone know that I, Pat Gann, am the coolest guy in the universe. So
I never said that.
So anyway, Derek, hit us with your last track and make it a good one, please.
Yeah, definitely. So my third track of the night is definitely a good one. It is from the Final Fantasy XI Chips album, and it is a medley of several of the nation themes as well as Ronfaure. It's got Sandoria, Bastok, and Windurst, also with Ronfaure, which is probably the most recognizable Final Fantasy XI track in there.
Love that song.
So it is a chip-tunified version, obviously being from the Chips album. I think it's really lovely, and it's my favorite track on that album. I think it does a really good job of bringing you back into Final Fantasy XI. If you've played it, it's going to be really nostalgic for you. You're going to recognize all the tunes.
I'm going to throw in real quick also the arrangements by Sexy Synthesizer, which is a pretty big name in Japanese chiptunes.
It's featured very heavily on a lot of their other SQ albums.
And if you haven't played it, then you'll probably want to listen to the soundtrack. So it's a great one, and I hope you guys enjoy the Three Nation medley.
you know what I didn't like about that medley?
Nothing.
Nothing. Except one thing. It's cool that he did a town theme medley, but for me, the areas immediately outside of the towns. So Ronfar, Gustaberg, and Sarita
Saruta Barita?
Barita. Yeah, those three songs to me, those three are all better. And in fact, I think Gustaberg is one of the best songs in all of FF11. Dun 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 dun.
Oh,
I feel
yeah,
like
that is a really cool song.
I feel like if they had done that medley, because they put Ronfar in here, and it's like, well, if you're gonna do that, like, get the other areas that go with the towns,
I think
because
it's
those are incredible medleys.
I think it's
melodies.
tough though. I mean, these are they're good songs to put on a label, and for me, I do like those songs, but I really liked 11 Chips was the best of those Chip albums they released, and this is one of my favorite tracks on there, not just because it has Ron Farr, but especially because it has Ron Farr. And I mean, I think I really like the way it's interpreted, which is important for a Chip song, because I mean, FF9 Chips, you had the track selection was kind of iffy, if you ask me, and just some of the tracks felt really phoned in, and I feel like this one didn't have that problem.
It's really peppy. I think all three of the town themes they have their peppy moments, but this really sort of revitalized all of those tracks, including Ronfar, Ronfar is a pretty slow tempo song. So for it to take all of those and really reinvigorate them, it made it a lot more exciting to listen to. And I feel like this song is really celebratory. So if you've played FF11, you're going to listen to this and be like, yeah, I remember all this stuff. And you'll be listening, and it's going to be, the beat is fast and it gets you excited. And I think that's really successful.
I think that's important too when you're mixing MMO music, because I mean, in my opinion, FF11 has the best MMO music ever. But with the amount of time you spend, what do you think, Don?
My favorite MMO music comes from the Korean game Granado Espada, but that's just personal opinion. Yeah.
That's too niche for me, even, and I'm like master of the niche. I've heard of that, but I've never heard the music.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never heard it.
It's a mix of orchestra, techno, electronica, everything.
Yeah, if we had covered like live events, that Osamu Kubota concert that they live streamed, and I think there's a YouTube video that you can watch it all. People should watch that, because that's just so good.
But in regards to this song, I'm not a big fan of the Chips albums overall, except for this 11 Chips, because I did think it was the most inspired of all of them. But
Definitely.
This was probably my favorite song on that album.
Well,
it made me happy. It was good.
It also made me happy, and I don't have very many memories to attach to 11, so I think that says, a lot for me anyway. So
yeah, I have no memories.
Yeah, I think
whatsoever. Who are you people?
Who are you? I think, Don, though, that's a big thing with MMO music, is I think a lot of people come to love it when they spend more time with it. Like, I can recognize the music from Lord of the Rings. Like, Lord of the Rings Online. I'm pretty sure nobody could point that music out, but I could, because I played that game a lot.
So that's really good music, too. Chance Thomas.
Yeah,
so good.
yeah. I mean, I think it's brilliant. I don't think anyone would recognize it, but I love it. Especially the Forest Shell music. Oh, but off topic. Pat, hit us with a song.
All right, this is my last one. We're going to talk about what makes it awesome afterwards, but I'm just going to throw this at you. Track 5 from Rebirth 2, the Romancing Saga Battle Arrange album. It's the 4 Demon Nobles Battle Medley. Here we go. So now for me to talk about this,
It was
Kenji,
metal.
yeah, totally metal. Kenji Ito, who did most of the Saga soundtracks. I think he did 5 of the 9 games or something like that. He self-arranged for the Romancing Saga trilogy from Super Famicom, but to do this awesome rock arrange, he was like, I need people who know how to rock. And so he basically borrowed Falcom's JDK band. If you look at the credits, it's like Ito and 3 or 4 other guys, and all but one of them are the current JDK band lineup. If you look in the liner notes, you'll never see the name JDK band because they weren't officially like conjoining Square Enix and Falcom, which by the way would be a cool idea. But basically, Ito was like, I need people who know how to kick ass. So he got, all of Kamikura's friends, and I think Kamikura himself does some stuff too. But it's
yeah,
just
he does the synthesizer work on like 5 tracks.
yeah, and even like if you look at it was recorded at Studio Foresta, which is like where that stuff's going down. So like it's basically Ito calls up Falcom and is like, "Hey guys, let's do it," and it's just so good. That track is the 4 Demon Nobles battle. There's 2 parts to it. There's 2 different 4 Demon Nobles battle tracks from Romancing Saga 3, which if you know people who play import RPGs, a lot of people say Romancing Saga 3 is the best game in the entire Saga series, which just makes me insanely jealous that I've really never had the chance to play it. That's some just really straight rock, and that's what this whole album is, just straight technical rock. It's like Black Mages, but you're less likely to know the source material, and it's a little less. I don't want to be mean about this. Black Mages albums were good, but I think this is a better album, and just musically, I just think it's sharper. I think the musicians are more technically capable than the Black Mages were. So those are my thoughts.
I think it's also, for being such hard rock, it's really listenable. I think that I also like the Black Mages, but this sounds terrible, but I find myself skipping Black Mages tracks on my iPhone a lot of the time. So this album I've been listening to quite a bit, and I never skip it. I don't know what it is. I just think it has a cleaner quality, even though it's still really rocking. But I like it a lot.
I think for me, I'm not a huge fan of the Black Mages. Like, I've listened to all their tracks, and like I appreciate, because I mean, they were one of the first of their kind. I think, not the first, but I mean, for me, they were like one of the first. Like, hey, this is a band with guys who make video game music that plays video game music, and it's rockin'. And like, I think as a like when I was younger, I liked the rock better, and now I'm not quite as into it in general. But I think this, for me, hooks me a little better because I feel like it I don't know. I don't want to say it's more melody driven because the Black Mages certainly are melody driven, but I mean, this just hooks me a lot better. There's something about it that.
No, it's good. I like it.
All right. Well,
Don,
Don,
take us out, man.
you are.
All right. So rather than choosing something from one of my favorite soundtracks of the year, I decided that I wanted to showcase something that maybe many people may not be familiar with, from probably my closest composer friend, Tenpei Sato. He helped contribute only 13 tracks to Mugen Souls, and I decided to choose one of his battle themes because I love the energy of his battle themes. And because he didn't really do any games from Nippon Ichi this year, because the one game I was looking forward to has been indefinitely delayed, even though the soundtrack has a singer that I want to hear so bad, that song that she sang for him. I can't say what it is, obviously, but Pat knows.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I know.
So I decided to give the people who love like his Nippon Ichi work something that they may not have known about. So without further ado, here's Violence Emotion from Mugen Souls. So that was, I'm assuming, a boss theme for Mugen Souls. I haven't played the game. I really have no interest in playing the game, but I like the soundtrack, so I decided I'd pick it.
Yeah, I was saying while we were listening to it, it just I'm not really terribly familiar with Tenpei Sato, but one of our other editors, an RPG fan, Neil, he reviewed the game, and actually I think Tucker reviewed the game, but he reviewed the soundtrack and he put it on his top for the year, and I said, I'll check this out. And I mean, for a guy who all I knew him as was the Disgaea guy, and I mean I liked the Disgaea soundtrack, I just didn't like the game, but just man, that was
one of his better rock songs. There's a lot to love about Tenpei Sato, and I think among the four of us, I would guess that, well, Don probably knows his work the best, but I've listened to, and if you go through RPG Fan's soundtrack reviews archive, RPG Fan music, excuse me, you will find a lot of cool, rare stuff that I've gone out of my way to listen to by Sato, like Bible Master 2, Red the Adventurous Sequence, the Japanese-only sequels in Marl's Kingdom. He's done some really cool stuff over time.
I love his soundtrack for Gunslinger Girl, the game.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a good one. I've only listened to that once, and I think it was like streaming from somewhere. But that's that's certainly a rare one. He's done a lot of cool stuff, but yeah, a lot of people just know him as the Disgaea guy.
Disgaea guy, yeah.
Or Nipponichi guy.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to Disgaea Dimensions 2, even though it's a direct sequel to Disgaea. I don't know why they couldn't. I mean, it's really hard to name it Disgaea 2 when you already have a Disgaea 2.
Yeah, that's confusing. Disgaea 1-2.
Disgaea 1-2. Disgaea .2.
Yeah. So Disgaea Dimensions 2. I know he's back for that. That's no secret. So.
Real quick, one thing I want to say about just the way the guitar is used, you mentioned Crunchy, there is a lot of hard cuts between that trilled note, and that style very much reminds me of Ryuji Sasai's work on Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, aka USA, Final Fantasy USA. That really reminds me of some of those battle themes, like just taking it outside of 16-bit synths and just like if you brought it live today, which this is totally unrelated, but for God's sake, of all the American fan arrangement bands out there that play awesome stuff at MagFest and everything, someone should just do the entire Mystic Quest soundtrack as a performance. Man. Can someone do that for God's sake, right now?
Every battle theme in that game is so good it justifies the game existing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that's what I thought of when I heard this song, and it really is. I've kept close tabs on Sato's work over the years, and there were things I liked and disliked about Disgaea 3 and Disgaea 4, but this song off of Mugen Souls is really just like a kick in the face, and it shows Sato, he hasn't fallen away at all. He's totally still kicking it.
Well, excellent. Well, I think that'll about wrap us up for the evening. So again, thanks to everybody for listening. Sorry it took us so long to get this out. Thank you, Pat, for your evening. I know you're exhausted. Don, thank you for taking your time to come visit an RPG Fan feature.
Yeah, anytime. And I'm just gonna make a quick plug.
Yes, please do. I was about to ask you to.
Well, visit our website www.squareenixmusic.com, which will be changing very soon. But also, Seventh Dragon 2022 comes out, so if you want more Koshiro, that's the time to get it, in April.
And Derek, thank you again. I've been wanting to do something like this for a long time, and
Steven and I are definitely willing to make this into a regular thing if you guys would like to see it as an offshoot of our standard podcast, which we'll keep doing that as well, of course. But if you guys are interested in the music, Steven and I love to talk about it, and we'd be more than happy to continue. So definitely shoot us an email or let us know in the forums. And thanks, as always, for listening to Random Encounter and its offshoots.
After we're done here, be sure to stay listening for Derek and I interviewed Casey Ormond, the arranger and performer of the Final Fantasy XII Piano Collections album, or Piano Collections Final Fantasy XII. So again, for Don, for Pat, for Derek, for me, thank you very much for listening, and catch you later. Hey everyone, I'm Stephen Myrick, Taylor on the boards, and today we've got a very special interview for you. Joining me today for that interview is my fellow editor.
Derek Heemsbergen, I'm Embryon on the boards.
And so today we're really happy to get a chance to sit down and chat with Casey Ormond.
Hello there.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Casey is the arranger and the performer of both the Valkyria Chronicles piano pieces and the more recent Piano Collection's Final Fantasy XII album, music originally composed by Hitoshi Sakimoto. So, question I always like to start with when we interview musicians is, just what's your background a little bit? How did you get into music itself? How did you get involved with, handling, game arrangements, that sort of thing?
Well, I started out more of a contemporary kind of player. Like I got really into Ben Folds 5 and pop piano and that sort of stuff. And just for fun, just playing with friends. In high school, I had a really good teacher who sort of introduced me to jazz players and everything. And then that's when I got the sort of the urge to listen to lots of different things. And I was a big fan of the FF games. And so when I discovered that there were piano collections of all the FF games, that kind of changed my entire world, because suddenly I can play music from my favorite games and all the arrangements are amazing. And so that's when the music of Masashi Hamauzu, Shiro Hamaguchi, their arrangements became kind of the main influence on my own style. And then, so all throughout high school, I was learning their songs. I was playing that stuff.
That's
and
awesome.
then, that was like my main deal. And then I went to study jazz at the West Australian Academy of Performing Arts, which is one of the main music schools in Australia. And yeah, then I learned more about jazz. I was still very much into the video game stuff, so there was a couple of assignments, like we had to do a big band chart, and I did an arrangement of Traveling Agency from FF10.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
Like-
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like a big jazz band thing, which was fun, and it kind of confused a lot of people, but it satisfied me. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And yeah, after uni, it was kind of I was thinking maybe it'd be cool to write for games. I was still just writing piano stuff, and yeah, I just kept writing piano arrangements as a hobby, and started putting things online and trying to get people into my music that way.
Well, I'm glad
so
you
yeah,
did.
yes, me too. Yeah, so I mean, it's been kind of lucky for me that I got into this when social networking got to where it was, because that's how I got to meet Sakimoto. I didn't realize how easy it was to connect with your idols when you can just literally talk to them directly on Twitter, and then something can actually happen that way.
That really is neat. Yeah, that's actually that was the next question we were going to ask you. If you wouldn't mind telling us the story of how you actually got hooked up with Sakimoto-san to make this album.
Yeah, that was. I'd started, like I said before, I'd been putting stuff online. I had in I think 2009, I started writing the Sky City of Bajurba arrangement. It's the same arrangement that's actually on the album now, the official album. I prettied it up a bit. I changed a couple of things for the official album. But yeah, I was just writing that as a hobby, because I'd just finished FF12, and as yet there was no piano collections coming out, and I was like, oh, why isn't there a piano collection for this? There's so much great music. Oh, I guess I'll just do it. And so I decided to do like an unofficial thing. I had all these different songs planned. I finished Bajurba and Erot Village, and just as a fan tribute, and I'd done some other Sakimoto songs as well. And I was just showing people online what I'd done, and Don Katowski from SEMO found the link to Sky City Bajurba, and then just overnight he had sent it off to Saki's Twitter. And then the next morning I had a DM from Sakimoto saying, oh, this is great, we should keep in touch. And mind blown.
That's got to be like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem, we'll keep in touch, idol.
Yeah. I was just like kind of dancing around my room going, oh my god. Yeah, unbelievable, because it was just a fan project. I had no expectations of it. It was just something to do as a hobby, and then suddenly this idol of mine is like, yeah, that's actually really good. And at that point, still, it wasn't. I didn't think that I'd be doing anything official with him. It was just like a cool geeking out moment. But regardless, after that, I got more into Sakimoto and I started looking at different soundtracks, Valkyria and everything. And every time I would make a new chart of his music, I'd send it to him, to his address at Bass Escape, and see what he thought. And that, again, it was just, so I could get some nice feedback. But it was also every time he'd say, oh, that's really great. And then eventually he was actually coming to Sydney in 2010 to do a recording for a soundtrack. And so he said, oh, well, I'll be in Australia. Why don't you come along and we can meet up?
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It was really lucky because he I think this was, no, it wasn't when he was working with Eminence. But yeah, he often works with orchestras in Australia. So it was lucky that we could meet up like that. Yeah, so I went over there and got to meet him and some of the Bass Escape team. And we had dinner and talked about stuff, and then we that was when we first discussed an official collaboration. By this time I was buzzing with ideas. I was like, oh, we could do like a collection of songs from different Ivalice games. We could do Valkyria Chronicles. We could do FF12. But of course I was still a pretty much completely untested arranger and performer, so I couldn't jump straight into the FF12 soundtrack because no one knew who I was. Sakimoto was a fan, but Square Enix needs a lot more.
I was gonna say, I think an endorsement from Sakimoto is a pretty big deal. But
It is, yeah. But I also had to prove it. I had to do something that, and now that I think about it, I'm talking about the Valkyria Chronicles CD, which we decided on during that meeting. It was something that I guess Sega was less guarded about the Valkyria franchise. They're more open to letting a newcomer sort of work with it. And so yeah, I did that album, and that was my first time like writing an official thing, and in a very short amount of time. Like at first it was like I got the information of what I should do, and it was like, we need 10 to 12 songs and you have a month.
wow, that is a short time frame.
You're like,
Yes,
okay,
it is.
no problem.
Yeah, no
Yep.
problem. All-nighters, coffee.
Yep, just throw that together, no worries. And I had a bit of a head start, actually. I had already worked on the Valkyria Chronicles 2 theme as a fan project, and so I had a bit of a head start. But apart from that, it was just I had to dive in, pick songs, and write them and record them. For that one, I recorded them here, and Saki was still in Japan, and we just kind of emailed back and forth and worked on it that way. And so yeah, that was sort of the start of my sort of official portfolio, and then they were able to use that to negotiate later on earlier this year with Square and say, this guy's got some skills.
It's got some chops.
Yeah, and that went a long way to helping me get onto a much bigger project like FF12.
Still, that's exciting. Sakimoto in general, Valkyria Chronicles is pretty well beloved, and I thought the soundtrack to that game was fantastic, and B, I thought the piano album was excellent too. And this was before.
Thank you.
I only recently started talking to Don, and he introduced me to zillions of musicians and that sort of thing. And I had said, we were talking about piano albums, and I said, oh yeah, I like the Valkyria Chronicles album. And he goes, oh yeah, Casey Orman did that. He's super cool. And so that wasn't the exact conversation, but this is paraphrase.
It was word for word.
Yeah, we're very
cool.
technical. And so have you heard that album, Derek? The Valkyria Chronicles piano pieces?
Oh, I feel so shameful admitting it here, but no, I haven't actually. I actually haven't even listened
No.
to most of the original soundtrack for Valkyria Chronicles. Like, I own the game, and I've only gotten a couple hours into it, and I don't know why I'm kind of holding out. Like, I wanted to experience it in the game first before I listen to anything else.
Sure, I can
I
understand.
have no excuse. It's awful.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely finish Valkyria Chronicles. That's an awesome game.
Yes.
And then listen to the piano collections. Get the whole experience.
The complete piano
I will,
experience.
for sure. Well, based on your FF12 album, I don't think there's any question I'm gonna like the Valkyria one.
It's I listened to it again now because I think doing FF12 developed my style even more, and I got better doing that album. And then I went back to Valkyria thinking, oh, this will sound sort of simple, and yeah, I went back to it and I thought, oh, yeah, it's still pretty good. I was yeah, it's funny how you yeah, you sort of are very critical of things that you do. Even just a year ago, I thought, when I finished Valkyria, I was like, oh, that was okay, but there's no way I could do FF12, and then it came up anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the nature of any kind of like, writing music, writing words. I think we all tend to criticize ourselves too much, and I,
Yeah.
I think that your work is pretty amazing. So I know that you're, people are always their own worst critics, but you definitely don't need to worry about the quality of your work for sure.
See, Casey, we ask you questions and we give you praise. We're the best interviewers ever.
You're such
It's
a cool
great,
guy.
yeah.
You have a
Loving
great
this.
beard.
I do find that interesting though, because I mean, like Derek was saying, I'll go back and read something I wrote, for RPG Fan. I was saying the other day, I read my first review of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, and I was like, wow, they hired me, man. Whew. But I think it's a growing process, and I do think, in my opinion, I think your arrangements are a little more, I would say, like mature. I don't have very good musical terminology, but I definitely got a sense of evolution from the Valkyria Chronicles album to
Yeah, it's a time
FF12.
thing too. It's because I had a month for Valkyria, but I had nearly half a year to work on the FF12 arrangements, and yeah, I was able to, yeah, like you say, a bit more mature. I could sort of dig into those songs a bit more, and then just have a bit more time to really feel out the melodies and to really get inside those songs. Whereas with Valkyria, it was just kind of a mad rush, and that sort of rush to finish everything was also a really good creative fuel, but it created a different kind of arrangements where it's just like the excitement of never having done something like that, and that actually was a good boost. But then having the time to spread out the songs and really get into them, that was also a good way to work as well.
Yeah, like the state of mind you're in when you're I say writing, but when when you're arranging, writing definitely has an impact on the work you produce. So I know a lot of piano albums I hear, I mean, I guess it varies. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but a lot of times when you hear a piano album, you either get a very conservative arrangement or you get a very liberal arrangement. And I think yours are very, at least in my opinion, and I don't know how you feel about this, Derek, but they're a little bit more interpretive because, Sakimoto's melodies just tend to be real. I think they're very complex, and he has like a really distinct sound compared to someone like, Uematsu or something like, it's very like, the grand march of battle, these sweeping sort of,
Right.
distro pieces.
It's really layered.
Did you have a hard time kind of like, what's the experience like when you're working with music of, I would say, that complexity to say, all right, I need to arrange this for piano?
Well, like you say, like you can recognize a Sakamoto song pretty much straight away. It's just really distinct style. And that quality of, and I think Uematsu has it as well. Like you listen to a song by Uematsu and you can tell it's him pretty much straight away, even if you've never heard it before.
Definitely.
And I think like that's the quality that makes a composer that's the quality that an arranger wants in a composer, that they have something unique, and then that's what you're chasing when you're arranging. You're trying to capture their sound, but also bring your own sound into it. And you're right, like a lot of my songs are more interpretive and change things up. It's kind of a conscious thing, like the tradition with the Piano Collection series is to have so many different piano styles, even within one album. It kind of reflects, the writing style and just the tradition in the games themselves. Is like in FF games, you have a lot of different, like there will be like hard rock, boss numbers, and then there'll be like a Latin song, and then there'll be, there's just so many different styles, and the Piano Collections are always up to matching that. They'll can have Latin piano songs, you can have really dramatic songs, you can have nice little ballads.
Yeah, like if you listen to like the Final Fantasy X-2 piano collection, that actually I had only recently heard. I had only heard that recently, and that one's got there's you can really tell there's a lot of variety to it in terms of
it's great.
Style.
It's really improvisatory and everything. Yeah, it's a fantastic one. And with Sakamoto songs, there is a lot of range, but there's not quite as much stylistic range as a Uematsu soundtrack. Like he has his own range of moods and things that he uses. He has like these really nice, upbeat, bouncy songs, like what's one from Valkyrie? The Summer and Landseal.
Yeah.
And so that arrangement is nice and bouncy, and but then he's got the really dark songs and obviously lots of battle songs and marches, like you said. So even though he has his own stylistic range, which is different from Uematsu-san's, I was still like, well, I think there's still things you can do within that. Like I can still choose to maybe do one song as a pop piano ballad, one song as like a tango, just as kind of as a challenge to my own writing, because I'm kind of a believer that when you're a writer and a performer, you should kind of be writing songs that are a little bit ahead of your actual skill.
Oh,
I think it's
absolutely.
something that happens anyway. Yeah, just so you are always challenging yourself. It's also easier to write harder things, and then when you actually get around to having to perform them, and you realize what you've done to yourself, and it's like, oh, God. There was a lot of practice for this album.
Yeah.
I realized what I'd written for myself.
That actually that makes me think of. So I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this or not, but what you actually performed the album. What was that like? Like, did you did they put you in like a booth and say, all right, go, don't make a mistake, or was it
No, yeah, we got a studio here in Perth, Crank Recording, which is one of the best studios in Australia, and we got a Yamaha Grand, and yeah, just a nice big studio. And yeah, we just do a couple of different takes, and then we can if there's any problems with the takes, then we can edit them. We can fix them up. But for the most part, yeah, it's just live performance recorded. Editing out little pedal sounds and small things like that. And yeah, so there was a pretty intense session. There's a lot of songs to get through. And most of the songs, that was actually another difference between Valkyrie and FF12, is when I actually finished writing all the songs and then I looked at them, and it was like an hour of music, and Valkyrie was only 40 minutes, and each song was, I think, on average like 5 minutes. So yeah, a lot of music to record. But yeah,
sure
no, the studio experience was... Pardon? Sorry?
I was going to say, I'm sure it must have been that it was intense. I mean, just considering the sort of scope of each song and how complex they are, I imagine that it must have been a pretty tiring experience, but definitely it paid off.
It did, yeah. Actually, the last day of recording was actually on my birthday. And that was the busiest day, but then after that we all went out, me, Saki, and some of the people, and yeah, that was a really nice birthday.
Oh, that sounds
that
literally
sounds fantastic.
literally living the dream.
Yeah,
it's pretty great. So yeah, no, the exterior experience was fun. It was Saki's really patient, and then we just go through bits of the song. He actually had very little feedback with the arrangements. He was just quite happy with what I did with it, even with the more interpretive ones, like changing To Walk Amongst Gods to a jazz thing. He's really into, I think he's just really interested in hearing his own music in all these different ways, which is good for me because I do like to change it up as much as I can. Actually, speaking of like the writing style, I tend to like some of the songs I feel don't have to change too much. Like the Arcadian Empire is kind of sort of like a transcription in the form, like it follows the form pretty much exactly. Whereas some of the ones like Erud Village, I know some people have listened to Erud Village and are kind of like, oh, what's he done? He's changed it so much from the original. Some of the ones are kind of, they're like alternate themes to the original themes. Like it's kind of like, embarrassingly, it's almost like fan fiction. Erud Village, it was a version of the theme that was like, what if it was sort of Fran's version of that theme? Like the character Fran, she's
I like that.
from the village and she was cast out. She can't hear the voice of the wood anymore. And so it's kind of a more darker, contemplative version of the song. And obviously I can't, say, when it was still a fan project, I was planning to give the titles of each song like different things, like Fran's version of the theme. Damask Estasan was another one. That was originally the whole song was going to be like in the intro, sort of like a lullaby style. and I was going to call that one Dalmascan Lullaby. You know, it's my fandom really, you know, geekiness kind of comes out with some of the concepts for these songs. Where I was like, you know,
I
I
like
love
that a lot, though.
Ivalice. Yeah, I love Ivalice so much. I was like, I wanted to kind of write my own stories within that world with different versions of the songs.
Oh, I like you.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic.
I'm pretty sure Derek will agree, but my favorite Final Fantasy is Tactics, other than 9. But the Evil East's, just that whole world is just so detailed, and just to hear you say that, you know, you're a fan of it, and that was kind of the angle you approached writing the music for it. I just think I think that's what anyone listening would want to hear. I mean, it's
Well,
coming
yeah,
from a place of love, you know.
Yeah, I've got a lot more experience as a fan than a musician with the Final Fantasy series, really. And Ivalice is like, it feels like just the whole combination of like Sakamoto's music and the writing and Akihiko Yoshida's designs and the art style. It feels so tangible. It feels like a world that's kind of always been there, and then the games are like a window to it. It's like
Really,
Yes, I love
any good
Akihiko
fictional
Yoshida
universe
is
feels like
probably
that. Yeah,
my sorry. Yoshida is probably my favorite artist, so I
yeah,
completely
it's
agree and
fantastic.
understand that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, to ask you another question to sort of segue, so Steven and I agree. I think both of our favorite track on the album is Mizuno Hotori, the Near the Water. And
Yep.
do you have a favorite on the album?
Ooh.
I know that's hard to ask. You
pick one
wrote
of your
it, so I mean,
pick one of your children. Tell us which one is your favorite.
yeah.
One of the 13 children.
Yeah.
In order. What are the best? Yeah, Near the Water is actually one of my favorites too. In the review that Don did, he mentioned how similar it was to Besaid Island from the FF10 piano collections, and which was spot on because that's pretty much exactly what I was trying to get the
Really?
style of. Yeah, that I love that Masashi Hamuzu's when he gets like a really light melody and he can just make the
Dance with-
piano sound so beautiful and bubbly and everything. And I wanted to get that really nice light style. I think it's the most Hamuzu type song that I've done.
I think I'd agree with that too. I mean, you know, based on the 2 albums I've heard and, you know, other projects you've done, but
My favorite one, A Moment's Rest as well. I was really happy with how that came out. Yeah.
We don't want to put you on the spot. It's just interesting to hear from the perspective of the person who wrote it.
Yeah, another one that was I was happy with. Ash's theme was one of the ones. Most of the songs I chose and then asked if they were good for the track list. Ash's theme is actually one that Saki recommended for me to do.
Oh, really?
And at first I was like, I wasn't sure what to do with it because the original is it has that sort of dark bit in the middle. You know, it's like this sort of strange dark melody, like kind of unconventional for a heroine's theme.
Yeah, because she has, you know, she's kind of, especially throughout the plot of 12, that's sort of, you know, what she gets into that conflict of, oh, am I going to use this, you know, the Nethicite, and you know, it's been a while since.
Yeah, she's got that really like that. She's driven by revenge, but has to not use the power for evil. Yeah, that really great arc that she has. And in the middle of her theme is that really like almost dungeony kind of music right in the middle of it. And the original version of that arrangement had something like that. It had a soft intro and then a really jarring kind of middle bit and then the nice soft bit at the end. But then, yeah, Saki specifically said he wanted it to be more bright and sort of tender, I guess. And so, yeah, that's how that one turned out. And yeah, so that was that one actually felt more like the Valkyrie ones because that was one that he recommended I write nearer to the end of the project. And so I had to quickly sort of look into this song and find a direction for it.
I think there's a good contrast too, and between the way that you did Ash's theme and Penelo's theme, because they're pretty opposite. And I said that in my review. I mean, just in terms of how Ash is like she's a dark, complex heroine, and not to say that Penelo doesn't have any complexity, but she's like the more lighthearted, sort of happy character, and I really like the way that you brought that out in both of those themes.
Yeah, it's interesting that they put them side by side. It was a good placement, I think.
I think so too. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're allowed to say, but were there any songs that you worked on that didn't make it to the album, or anything that material that was cut that
Oh no, not whole songs. No, I mean the all the songs have about, you know, 4 or 5 extra pages of stuff that I can't use. I tend to, with an arrangement, I'll write quite a lot of stuff, and then when I'm putting it together into a song, not all of it is compatible. So there's probably like half an album's worth of cut material just from the original tracks that I chose. But yeah, there was no songs that I didn't, you know, send anything and they said no, that's no good. Saki was pretty enthused about whatever I sent him. You know, I had quite a lot of freedom to choose styles and everything.
Well, very good. Is there this is another thing we're a little reluctant to ask, but is there any chance we might see you working with Sakimoto again, perhaps on something Remza related?
I hope so.
please?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really confirm or deny anything. You know, it's we've only just finished this one.
Absolutely.
But of
This
course,
is
yeah,
just
I'd
us
love
being
to
fans.
Yeah. And as a fan myself, I would definitely love to do Tactics. I think even a Tactics suite might work, like songs from Tactics and Advance and A2.
Oh yes.
There's a lot of amazing songs. Actually, Tactics Advance was the first game that I sort of first started getting into Sakimoto's music.
Really?
Yeah, there's something about there's so many gorgeous melodies in that. There's the sort of the light-hearted version of Sakimoto was like really affected me, and yeah, I'd love to do music from that game too.
I think
Yeah,
that is.
so fingers crossed.
Yes, I'll cross mine too. That's interesting too, though, because I agree. I wasn't the biggest fan of the game Tactics Advance, mostly because I was one of those people complaining. I was like, it's not Final Fantasy Tactics, argh! And
Yeah.
kind of in hindsight, I appreciate that game more. And I agree that it was really interesting to hear the music. It's undoubtedly Sakimoto, but you get this. It's lighter, exactly like you said. It's in keeping with the tone of the game, and I thought it was a really nice change from Sakimoto because his music tends to have a lot of weight to it, and
But yeah, he can still surprise you with like he can make really playful, delightful melodies too, as
absolutely,
well as these big, you know, dark battle themes. It's a lot of range.
definitely.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe we're delving into stuff we can't talk about too. But like, if you were to work on, say, like Final Fantasy Tactics, like, are there any songs that you really like that you would say like, oh, it'd be so cool to arrange this? Like, I've always dreamed of arranging Trisection or Antipyretic or something.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Trisection. That's a. I'm trying to think of the titles. Oh, the battle on the bridge.
That's a great
Which
one.
Yeah, that's a great one.
You have good taste.
Avelia's Worries. That theme. There's a lot of good recurring themes in the soundtrack.
Absolutely.
I have actually done an arrangement of Avelia's Worries, but it's no longer available because of the whole work with Sakimoto.
Yeah.
But that's in the vault, so maybe it'll come out again.
Maybe sometime.
And yeah, Tactics and in Tactics Advance, there's just a lot of really good battle themes. The what is it? The Friends Who Surpassed, something like that. I can't remember the titles, but yeah, there's plenty. I could probably make a list if I had time.
Well, that's interesting. I think with Tactics was my first exposure to Sakimoto, and I mean, I remember I was considerably younger. I had just finished Final Fantasy VII. I didn't know what it was. I just saw, Final Fantasy. I really like that other game with that cloud guy. I'm gonna get this, and just musically, Final Fantasy Tactics is such a departure from Final Fantasy VII. I mean, they're both. I like both the soundtracks, but I mean that first battle when Trisection starts and everybody starts marching in place. I mean,
yeah, in the rain and the.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that in my dreams sometimes. I see that moment. I'm like, that is like one of the seminal moments I've had growing up playing games. So
Yeah,
that's
cool.
If you ever get a chance to do that, wink, wink.
Yep.
So another question I ask every musician we work with: what's your favorite music? Like your favorite game soundtrack. Maybe non-Sakimoto to freshen it up. Non-video game music, that sort of stuff. I mean, you said you like jazz.
I got into a lot of like bebop stuff. Thelonious Monk, especially, or Brad Meldau as well. He's a modern player and yeah, really interesting harmonic stuff. I've mentioned Ben Folds earlier. He was like the main influence for me before like the FF stuff. Like I literally learned every song that Ben Folds 5 made, and then yeah, for game soundtracks, yeah, it has been the FF series, Sakamoto games and everything, and you know the classics, yeah, Chrono Trigger, all of the really good ones. That's actually another album that I'm surprised there hasn't been a piano collections of.
Yeah,
Series.
We were going to ask you that actually. Just sort of to segue out of that, are there any non-Final Fantasy soundtracks that you'd like to work with, or any game in the world even?
Yes.
like Dream Project.
Yeah, I guess yeah, Chrono Trigger. If I can just go mental and just say any game, Chrono Trigger, the Persona 3 and 4 soundtracks.
Oh yes,
fantastic stuff in there. Like, I'm looking at one of the characters right now on your Skype avatar.
Yes, Derek is our
fan.
Derek is our notorious Persona lover.
Yeah, I'm the guy,
Yep.
the Persona guy.
I'm actually playing Golden right now.
It's excellent.
It's a lot of fun. Persona, Chrono, Persona. Oh, Secret of Mana.
Oh yes.
Yeah, Secret of Mana
Hiroki
2 and 3.
Kikuta.
Lots of cool stuff in there too. I think Hiroki Kikuta's music is really well suited for piano.
I would agree. It's really like, again, I've said this about every composer so far, but it's very distinct. I mean, you know when you're listening to Kikuta. Like, I mean, even growing up, like, I would say, I was like, this isn't the guy that did Final Fantasy, you know, before I knew, you know, who was who and all that sort of thing. This is just so different, and his music is really rich.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Really dense. Really. Yeah. There's a lot of meat there. It'd be really fun to arrange songs from that.
All right. Well, I mean, that's sort of all the questions we really had. You know, it was a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for making time for us. We know.
Thank you.
It was
Really,
crazy because Derek is on the West Coast. I'm on the middle of the U.S. You're in Australia, so
it's lucky we found a time that worked.
Yeah, I appreciate your working with us. I really wanted to make sure we get this in because I was a huge fan of the Piano Collection album, and I would love to see you working with, you know, other albums in the future. Because I mean, I think Pat Gann reviewed on RPG Fan. He reviewed the Valkyria Chronicles album, and he pointed out that this is it's sort of unprecedented to have a non-Japanese working on the arrangements. You know, like, and I really like that because I reviewed Jim Guthrie's Scythian Steps album, which was the Sword and Sorcery EP arrangement for Japan, where they got a bunch of really famous Japanese composers to rearrange, you know, a Westerner's music. And, you know, it was such a great fusion of different styles that I was really excited when, you know, I found out that you'd be able to do the piano collections for 12. So it's sort of unprecedented. So, I mean, you're a big deal, man.
Yeah, it's great. I hope it's a trend that continues. I actually have a friend who, funnily enough, also from Perth, also has worked with a big name, Kevin Penkin. Do you know he's worked with Uematsu?
Really? On
a soundtrack for an Otome title on PSP. It's a Japanese name I can't remember right now, but yeah, he also just.
I think I know what you're talking about. I forget the name of it too.
It's
Jiuzengi something.
Yeah, we actually I actually just had somebody review that soundtrack.
Okay.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, he came along one of the days of the recording and sat in and yeah, we're good mates and he's worked with Uematsu. He's written soundtracks with Uematsu. Uematsu's written the main theme and then he's done the rest of the soundtrack and yeah, he's really going places. He's great.
That's again, like you said, it's a trend I hope to see continue because I think we can only get good things out of it because you get such a fresh perspective. Because I mean, Square's music is so prolific and it gets rearranged so much. I mean, they released, you know, I think it was something like 9 albums this year of arranged
Yeah, it was
music.
a huge year for them with music, yeah.
Yeah, and it's mostly good and I think that's in part because they're getting these fresh faces to come in and interpret it. I mean, And in a lot of cases, like with the Final Fantasy tribute album that just came out, you have people that grew up listening to this music arranging it, so you have this really different perspective.
Yeah, I think that I think you kind of nailed it there. With there's now this whole generation that's suddenly like the fans that like their work is just exploding. You got all this interesting artwork and people making their own music, and there's so much talent like online with people just doing this stuff for free, just for fun, just out of the love of doing it. And it's great that a company as big as Square is actually reaching out and looking at things. And I mean, Base Escape was that sort of company too. They recognized that sort of thing, and lucky enough to get me on board. So yeah, I hope it's something that continues.
We all benefit from that, I think.
We do.
Well, again, for Derek and myself, thank you so much for your time. It was fantastic speaking to you. Great work on the album. I mean, like I said, I'm going on a long road trip. It's on my iPod for heavy listening.
Great.
So,
And for those of us that haven't heard the album, where can we get that, Casey?
The easiest way to get it is on iTunes. You can import it as well. I think PlayAsia and a couple of different sites to get the booklet, CD, and everything. There's also the sheet music book is coming out on Amazon on the 23rd of December.
Ooh, how cool!
If you want to learn them, and if you want to complain about how hard they are to me, you can follow me on @CaseyOrmond on Twitter.
Wonderful.
And on there I just talk about stuff that's coming out with the album, and also I'll once I find out the best way to get the book, because I know it's on Amazon Japan right now, and then I'll just give people an update once I know where else you can get it.
Fantastic.
And all that sort of stuff.
That is really neat. And if you guys haven't seen it already, I did review Casey's album. It was amazing. If you haven't gathered that already from this interview, and you can find that on RPG Fan as well.
Excellent. All right.
Cool.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks so much for your time, Casey. It was really a pleasure.
Cheers. It was great. Thanks.